Since 2003, this is the Sports Source, East Tennessee's #1 sports talk show.
Brought to you by Junk Be Gone and the Garza Law Firm.
With your host, John Pennington. The Sports Source starts now.
Good Sunday morning. Welcome into the Sports Source here in the Paper Be Gone studios. I'm stumbling because I forgot to say right off the bat, Happy Mother's Day. But good Sunday morning on this Mother's Day, and Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there, including my own. We hope you have a good day, and we appreciate you tuning in here. It was a good week for Tennessee football, bad week for Tennessee baseball, and a wild, earth-shaking week for college sports in general and for college football fans. We'll break all of that down from a UT perspective as we go through the next 90 minutes. We'll also have, in addition to our first wave of panelists who I'll introduce shortly, we'll also have VFL Marlon Walls out here to talk about some of the big changes in football and in college sports and how he views that. So we got a fun show. Let's dive right into it. Our first segment brought to you by the folks at the Garza Law Firm. When you need an attorney, you want someone you can trust. And I hear a cop car outside right now. Somebody's going to need an attorney. You want someone you can trust, someone with a track record of success, someone who knows the local legal system and everyone in it. In other words, you want Marcos Garza and the Garza Law Firm. They check all the boxes, folks. They have for years. Neighbors right here in East Tennessee. Find out more about them at garzalaw.com, the Garza Law Firm. All right, let's welcome in those panelists that I mentioned. I'm going to do this very quickly. Right there is David Ubben. All right, now David Ubben works for The Athletic. We welcome you.
Appreciate it.
These other three guys all work for 99.1 The Sports Animal, so it's rare that we have all three of you in here, but Josh Ward, Jimmy Himes, Vince Ferrara, thanks for getting in one vehicle, a clown car, and driving over here together from your station. Appreciate you being here.
Jimmy got a new NIL deal, so he rode separately.
Separately, there you go. There you go. A Lamborghini.
Lamborghini.
All right.
To shift those gears.
Yeah. Tennessee football up to #7 in the country in 24/7 Sports composite recruiting rankings. That's for the class of 2023. For the class of 2022, there was some good business done this week as well. Maybe I shouldn't say good business, but we'll get into that a little later in the show. But there's positive stuff happening. Let's go ahead and put up the names here. This past week, Tennessee got some good news in the transfer portal. Andre Turrentine, a Nashville-raised cornerback who is transferring in after a year at Ohio State. Brew McCoy, who Tennessee's been after, a former 5-star receiver who's transferring in after a couple of years at USC. And then visiting this weekend is another sought-after recruit of transfer, UCF receiver Jalen Robinson, who reportedly has narrowed his choices to Tennessee and Ole Miss. You also brought in another couple you had another transfer too, one from ETSU, big guy, it's going to be a preferred walk-on. But it's all, the birds are singing, the sun is shining. Right now, Tennessee has become an attraction for receivers and for other transfers, for recruits. Talk to me a little bit about just how the clouds are kind of lifting at the moment. Feels that way anyway. Josh Heupel and his crew making this a destination at the moment.
Yeah, and players that Tennessee wants and need. Like you need help in the defensive backfield. So Andre Turrentine, as you mentioned, John, from Nashville. Well, what was the complaint of the previous 12 months? Not being able to get guys in state. So now you go to Innsworth and get a guy from the 21 class who was highly touted and also at a school like Ohio State, so big-time talent. Brew McCoy, same deal, went to Texas, USC. You need help at wide receiver. But these big names, seeing Tennessee as an attractive destination, that was not the conversation 12 months ago.
Yeah, I think you look at the whole situation. You have a better than expected year one, pretty good vibes in general. People are happy and enjoying it and enjoying the program. Money aspect of it, I feel like when people talk about recruiting decisions, they don't want to talk about it. We'll talk about it plenty later in this show, but that helps you bring people in. All these things, Tennessee's in a really good spot right now. So, the guys want to be a part of that is not really a surprise. And you're seeing a lot of coaches, too, that year two bump in recruiting, your first full recruiting year. This is the time to capitalize on that, and Tennessee's doing that.
Go ahead, Jimmy.
I was going to say, I think the Music City Bowl was huge for Tennessee because, one, you got to see an exciting offense. So if you're a receiver, quarterback, whatever, you would want to play in that offense. The other thing that was good about the Music City Bowl is you saw that defense. So if you're a defensive player, you know you can come in here and play because that was an awful defense. So I think the Music City Bowl was huge for Tennessee.
Well, in hindsight, the fact that it was a 95-94 game that went for 5 hours, when you do that, I mean, all the bowls get some amount of highlights on ESPN because ESPN owns all the bowls. But you got an extra amount of coverage. It got great ratings because any game like that, people are going to tune in. I don't think you're wrong. I mean, I think that Music City Bowl really did help Tennessee in terms of getting the brand out there. Vince, your thoughts on how Tennessee has kind of made themselves a destination right now?
Well, it has, and you look at the transfer portal. I mean, wasn't that one of the things we're saying? Well, Tennessee a little slow in the transfer portal.
Still only ranked number 43 in the transfer portal ranking.
That's
but
true.
Yes.
But now you've improved in a lot of other areas. Well, you had a lot of areas covered and shown that progress that the guys were talking about. Now you're starting to make some hay in the transfer portal as well. And if they get Jalen Robinson, he played under Heupel in 2020, almost 1,000 yards receiving, deep threat, perfect for this offense. So that would even add to that momentum they have.
You know, I said a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about NIL stuff that it felt to me like right now when you've got the NIL lead and everybody in the country saying, well, the guys in the lead are Texas A&M and Tennessee and maybe Oregon, while you've got that advantage before something changes, we're on the verge of maybe something changing. But before something changes, you got to take advantage of that. If you've got the lead, you got to, 1, get these guys in here. Well, they're doing it. They're taking advantage. 2, you got to win in the fall. Because if the NIL advantage goes away, if other teams catch up, if there's guidelines that are put up, you're eventually going to have to get back to recruiting guys because you win. So the positive is, I think they are taking advantage on the front end, which they needed to do. You don't want to be leading the way in NIL and then miss out on Brew McCoy and miss out on Andre Turrentine. So the fact that they're getting them is a big coup. David, you mentioned, I think this was off air, but a few weeks ago, and it kind of goes back to what Josh was talking about, these guys who are out of state coming back. You spoke to an SEC coach, football coach, recently who said, we always want to at least be number 2. If we lose a guy who goes out of state, we want to be number 2 because if somebody goes somewhere and doesn't get playing time, if someone goes somewhere and they're not happy, they typically want to come back home. And it looks like you've got at least one of these guys coming back here.
Yeah, I think that's one aspect of the transfer portal era that not too many people are talking about because we always talk about who can adjust the best, who can adjust. And one way to adjust is the kids in your state that are good enough to go to the Ohio States, the USCs, the Alabamas, the Georgias. It might work out for them, and they might become top 10 picks or whatever. But it might not. And they might say, I'm not loving this here, I'm not playing it, or whatever. And when they decide to come back, you look at where transfers go. 90% of the time, they do come home. And if you kept on pushing late in the recruiting, even if you knew we're probably going to lose this guy, this is where it pays off. A guy like a Turrentine, Brew McCoy not necessarily, but you have a lot of in-state talent, obviously, in the 2022 class that you missed out on. You're chasing guys in 2023. And you don't know what's going to happen with all those guys. And if they do transfer, you can bring them in, and they're suiting up for you 3 months later. And that's a huge asset and something that I think a lot of coaches have to do to adjust to the transfer portal era.
And you can continue to tamper when you did
Also
get them,
true.
and then get them back home.
For now, yes, absolutely.
McCoy's also kind of a pipeline. Like you think recruiting pipelines.
Yeah.
Ellis Jones and Chase McGrath both transferred.
And Chase Tremblay.
Yeah, that's right. So, Caleb Tremblay. So they all came to Tennessee, and Bayless told Brew, hey, it's a good experience in this offense, and Chase and Brew, I think, closer than people would know, too.
Good producing work there. Let's talk about Bayless Jones in the next segment when we talk about Tennessee. In the 80s, it was wide receiver U. There was no debating that. There have been a few times over the years, recently as a matter of fact, when Tennessee has tried to claim that moniker again. No, look, that slipper wasn't fitting on Cinderella's foot. Is it about to? Are we about to go back to seeing Tennessee be wide receiver U? Let's talk about the guys who went in the draft. Let's take a look at history and what this offense does with players at that position going in the draft. Wide receiver U, is it about time to dust off that name for real this time? Come on back on the Sports Source.